It's the international break, and whilst that means we get a little pause, a little bit of a rest from the horrible performances that we've been seeing recently, what we don't get a pause from is the news, and today that is all about Enzo Fernandez. Welcome, Blue Believers, to another episode of the Stamford Sync, where we are syncing up with everything Chelsea FC. And today, we're talking about Enzo Fernandez, because that is news that is just not going away, and it's basically going to be like this for the rest of the season, isn't it? I would imagine, barring a complete turnaround, getting comfortably into the Champions League and maybe him scoring a winning goal in the FA Cup final if we manage to get there, we're probably going to be seeing about this news up until the summer. Do you know what I mean? One way or the other. So, guys, before we get into it, if you are enjoying the content and would like to see more, please do me the distinct honour of liking and sharing the video, subscribe to the channel, or just roast me in the comments, whatever gets you through your day. Let's just dive into it. We start with a tweet from PYS pertaining to Real Madrid and their hunt for midfielders. Real Madrid will be active on midfielders in the summer, but they are still discussing internally what player or players they want to go for. Enzo didn't deny interest, and there's no agreement yet on fresh salary terms between him and Chelsea. So that is posted via Fabrizio Romano. And we love a bit of Fabi, don't we? A bit of Fabi Rom. So step one of the story is Real Madrid are interested in bolstering their midfield. There has been talk about the likes of Camavinga being sold, for instance, and they are, they haven't had like Galacticos in their midfield for a little while, have they? And I guess compared to what they've got at the moment, Enzo Fernandez probably fits that. I have mentioned before, I do think he would probably play pretty well in that team and in La Liga in general. And because Real Madrid is a lot more of a player-focused team than it is a system-focused team, I could see that really getting the best out of Enzo Fernandez. I think Enzo Fernandez's versatility is kind of one of the things that hurts him a little bit, do you know what I mean? And if you just take Enzo Fernandez, look at his strengths and put him in the position that gets the best out of those, then I imagine you'd probably see a lot more from him in general than we do. Now, saying that, he's been good for us, man. He's been good for us. His numbers have been fantastic for the last couple of seasons, and he's been an important part of the team. But he is getting on. My mind is warped by the Blue Co model, where all of a sudden, if you're 25, you're spoiled milk. It's obviously not like that, but from Enzo Fernandez's perspective, he's getting on to 25. He's just about to enter the absolute prime of his career, and he wants to win trophies, right? And you would have thought he'd probably be more likely to win more trophies at Real Madrid than he is at Chelsea right now. So, look, that's just the base of it, right? And essentially what lifts this story off the ground is the fact that Real Madrid are looking like they're going to be going in for midfielders in the summer. Whether they're going to be up for spending the amount of money on, because they didn't spend that amount of money on anyone in their midfield at the moment. Do you know what I mean? Fede Valverde was cheap. Camavinga, they didn't spend a huge amount on. Tchouaméni wasn't super expensive. They've got no 80+ mil midfielders in their ranks at the moment, I don't think. And Enzo Fernandez would maybe signal a return of the proposed Galactico era at Real Madrid. So moving on, CFC Daily posted from Ben Jacobs. A lot of these next tweets are from Ben Jacobs, by the way. Breaking: Chelsea don't want to lose Fernandez, and he has not directly told the club he wishes to leave. However, TalkSport has learned Fernandez was disappointed by the manner of Enzo Maresca's exit and is actively exploring options without outright agitating for a transfer away. So that's basically backing up what we've already seen, isn't it? Now, there was an interview that came out recently, apparently him mentioning that he thought the team was solid and had an identity with Maresca, and he doesn't really understand why the change was made. It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because Enzo Maresca walked, he wasn't sacked. So he made that decision to leave because he was struggling to work within the parameters that have been set for him by our clown show of an ownership. But at the same time, it's a weird one for me as well, because Enzo Maresca left off of the back of a lot of losses and bad results, do you know what I mean? So it's not exactly like the team was just absolutely smashing it and the identity was super there. We were getting torrid results, do you know what I mean? Torrid results. We made Leeds look like Real Madrid. We got battered 3-1 by Leeds, do you know what I mean, in that run-up to him leaving. And the only games that he won in that run was Everton, where he came out and said the thing that he said, and Cardiff, I think, in a stretch of 8 to 10 games or something. We just got loads and loads of poor results. So, I don't know, different players are going to like different managers. Like Cole Palmer and João Pedro seem to be flourishing a lot more under Liam Rosinha, albeit not so much lately, but in general, do you know what I mean? They seem to look a lot better in the team, and Enzo Fernandez maybe looked better under Enzo Maresca. I'm not 100% sure, but and maybe this is just Enzo Fernandez venting frustration at the situation, right? Because change is difficult. This is one of the reasons why, as difficult as it is with Liam Rosenior at the moment, and he's not exactly smashing it with the results, this is one of the reasons why it's not necessarily just the idea to sack him right now. More change isn't necessarily, like, we can't rely on a new manager bounce with an interim where we could end up in an Igor Tudor situation to get us through the rest of the season, right? We need some consistency in there. And what Enzo Fernandez has kind of said in that respect already is that the lack of consistency and changing the manager when we did is something that he feels has hurt the team anyway. So, Chelsea don't want to lose him. Good, obviously. Do you know what I mean? He's obviously a high profile property in terms of value, but also in terms of numbers as well. He's the vice captain. There's a lot. He's not just a player. Like, there's a lot more to it than that. And he's developed here. He's, the fans really, really like him as well. But yeah, so the other positive there is he's not agitating for a transfer, but he's left the door open. That's what's really important here. Is Enzo Fernandez is swinging those doors open, basically issuing a come and get me plea rather than, like, he's not going to. And the thing is, he can't agitate for a move away because we're not going to take a loss on him. Do you know what I mean? This is like, I mentioned this a while ago, this is the first real test of Blueco's long contract model. Right? Forget about the age and whatever. The long contract model where players are on these really long contracts. Like Enzo Fernandez is with us until 2030. There's still 4 years left on his deal. His book value plus his proposed increased value based on his performances mean that we're going to be looking for 100 mil plus again in order to, if we're going to sell him. Now, like I say, if Real Madrid come and they're like 120 mil, maybe something like that, yeah, of course he'll go. Blueco are absolutely going to sell him as long as they feel like they're getting a good deal. There's profit. They can reimburse it in more teenagers to improve the squad. But I'm not surprised he's not agitating for a move because he's not really in a position to do so. If he had 1 to even 2 years left on his deal, he'd be able to push for that and it'd be a lot easier for him, because if he had 1 year left on his deal, he'd just do what Trent did and what Kylian Mbappe did when they went to Real Madrid, and they'll just run it down. Do you know what I mean? But he can't run down 4 years because he'll be 29 by that point and he'll miss all of that time in his career. So I'm not surprised that he's not exactly looking to agitate for a move away. Moving on, Chelsea Dodgers posted again from Ben Jacobs. Enzo Fernandez was disappointed by the manner of Enzo Maresca's exit and is actively exploring options without outright agitating for a transfer away. He wants to play in the Champions League regularly, and the summer may be influenced by whether Chelsea qualify or not. So most of that is the same as the one that came from before, but with the addendum, he wants to play Champions League regularly, and the summer may be influenced by whether Chelsea qualify or not. So this is kind of what I was saying before. If we manage to turn around the season, it's less like, I only see this thing with Enzo Fernandez really being a huge issue, especially if Chelsea don't want to sell him if we don't make Champions League. Now, we might be the most undeserving recipients of a Champions League spot ever next season, because we're in this weird situation that relies on results around us, right? If Aston Villa finish in the top 4 and win the Europa League, which it looks like they could, then the first, before I carry on with that, and the coefficient for English teams performing in Europe is strong, which means we get the 5th spot for Champions League places. If Aston Villa win the Europa League, there will be 6 spots, and 7th will get Europa League, and 8th will get Europa Conference League. So, look, just because of the wildness of how football is, we could literally still finish in the Champions League by finishing in 6th place. But that relies on Aston Villa winning the Europa League, right? Because if they win the Europa League, they get Champions League qualification. That way, you can't qualify for the Champions League twice in one season, so they add that to the Premier League's list, essentially. So it's crazy because we were going from like, we're never going to finish in the top 4, and then it was like English teams not doing so well, but the coefficient is apparently still quite strong, and we're looking like we're going to get that 5th spot as of right now. And like I say, if Aston Villa win the Europa League, then that's 6 spots. So Chelsea could get a Champions League place by finishing 6th in the Premier League. That's wild, isn't it? That is just wild. But if that happens, and ultimately the thing there is if we do finish in a Champions League spot, I don't expect to see any more news about the Enzo Fernandez stuff, to be completely honest. Like, they get pay rises and pay bumps for being in the Champions League, don't they? And if we don't finish in the Champions League and we go down to the Europa, I think they get pay cuts because of the way that all of these deals have been structured, with the long deals, the long model or whatever. So it is interesting. It's definitely interesting. Like I say, I do think that the Champions League qualification will play a huge part in how this story develops. But then there was one more from Chelsea Dodgers, Enzo Fernandez is open to a move to Real Madrid this summer and it would be viewed as a dream move. His preference is a switch to La Liga. Chelsea doesn't want to lose him and he has not directly told the club he wishes to leave. That again was Ben Jacobs. Jen Jacobs all over it at the moment. So look, this is just more reinforcement of the same thing. It's lots of kind of people it's the same thing, but there's little pieces of information and addendums in each one that make it interesting. It makes sense that Enzo Fernandez would love to move to Real Madrid because he feels like he's that quality and caliber of player, and also we haven't got much in the way of like Galacticos in the squad at the moment, really. And Enzo Fernandez, especially seeing as Cole Palmer is, kind of been off form recently, I would arguably Reece James and Enzo Fernandez are probably the closest to that Galactico kind of look, aren't they? Reece James obviously signed up with us for another 6 years, but also is injured probably for another few weeks. But the other thing, again, is another thing here, like he's not directly told the club he wishes to leave. And what that says to me is, look, it's just one of those, isn't it? Like he can't, I think, and it's interesting because I've done loads of like live streams and chats and collabs and had loads of really interesting conversations with Chelsea fans across this season, and a lot of them have said these long contracts don't matter, and I can't really figure that out in my head. Like, if a player wants to leave, he'll leave, but that's not necessarily true, is it? Like, you can agitate. If you've got more cards in your hands, you can agitate for a move away. Like I say, if Enzo Fernandez had even 2 years left on his deal, if he's got 2 years left on his deal, that is the most value you'll be able to get out of him, even if you take a loss. If he's got 1 year left on his deal, he'll run it down. He's got 4 years left on his deal, and I just don't really get how they can agitate for these moves at the moment with the situation that they're in. Do you know what I mean? This is the big change, isn't it? That we haven't seen these long sorts of contracts before where you're guaranteed a lot of money for a long time, but you put the power in the club's hands, essentially. The club will only sell you if it suits them, and we are very, very unlikely to be backed into a corner where we are forced to sell these players because of things like running down contracts. We saw that with the likes of Antonio Rudiger. We've obviously seen it, like I say, recently with Trent and Kylian Mbappe going to Real Madrid by running their contracts down. And these are really, really high-profile players as well. So there is just a need to avoid that kind of thing happening in the future, isn't there? That's the truth. The long contracts can hurt us because if we look at the other side of the coin, then you've got Mykhailo Mudryk, right? Mykhailo Mudryk on a super, super long deal, and because of everything that's gone on and how bad he's been, it's going to be ridiculously difficult to sell him. Even if he was in the squad at the moment, if he wasn't absolutely smashing it and we don't want him, then we're stuck with him. Do you know what I mean? We're stuck with him. It's going to be really difficult to get him to somewhere else when they've got these long contracts. So there are two sides to the coin, and the only danger that I can obviously see is that we end up with a player that we put on a long contract who turns out to be rubbish and it just costs us a lot of money, vis-a-vis Raheem Sterling, for instance, 300k a week to literally barely play football and go out on loan and stuff. We had to cancel that contract. It's cost us money. But with the Enzo Fernandez situation, where there's a player who there is interest in, do you know what I mean, from potentially Real Madrid, this is there was noise about PSG and Saudi, but it seems like Real Madrid is the only club that, is realistic in terms of coming in for him. But he's got 4 years left on his deal, like I said. So, look, tell me what you guys think about all of this in the comments. I think it's a little bit wild. I think it's a bit nuts. But what I do think is that this will only happen if we don't finish in the Champions League. If we end up as a Europa League team next season, then chances are we'll sell Enzo Fernandez, right? Because the thing is, if we don't get the Champions League money guaranteed for next season, we're going to have to sell someone probably in order to fund the other changes that we absolutely desperately need to make to the squad. And those being, we need 2 new goalkeepers, realistically, or we bring Penders back, I'm not sure, but we need at least 1 new goalkeeper. We need a centre-back or 2, especially if we're looking at shipping out the likes of Badiashile, Tosin, Axel Disasi. We're going to need to do a little bit of surgery there. Our midfield situation, if we lose Enzo Fernandez, is going to have to be looked at because we're not going to be strong enough without him, because at the moment that leaves us with Dario Basugo, Andre Santos and Romeo Lavia. Romeo Lavia made of glass. Dario Basugo, we've not seen enough of him yet because he's come back basically from a season-long injury. Andre Santos not being favoured by the manager at the moment, and there are links about selling him to Inter Milan recently as well. And the thing is, I feel like Andre Santos would be the top of that sale list as well, compared to the likes of Romeo Lavia, for instance, because we got him cheap and we'll be able to make profit on him. So we'd need some surgery on the midfield if we were to sell Enzo Fernandez. realistically, we need a left winger as well. Do you know what I mean? It's like the striker situation. We've got Omega coming in. Liam Delap is Liam Delap, but maybe he stays for next season. Right wing is fine with Esteval and Quenda, but the left wing really needs looking at as well. So if we don't finish in the Champions League, we're going to have to do something like selling Enzo Fernandez in order to get the money to reinforce our squad for next season anyway. So, guys, let me know what you think about the Enzo Fernandez situation. Is it just going to happen? Do you think he's just done with the club and he wants out? Or do you genuinely believe it when the idea is being floated that if we get Champions League football next season, it'll be a little bit less of a problem? Nice one, guys. Just a short one today. I'm going to wrap it up there, but I'll catch up with you all very soon. Take it easy. Peace.